Hey there, teacher colleague. If you are getting ready to take your elementary teacher certification exam, welcome to this ultimate practice test that gives you every single type of question that you need to know in order to pass the English language arts and reading instruction section of your upcoming exam. In this practice test, I will teach you how to master key exam topics, including phonological and phonemic awareness, phonics and word recognition, reading fluency, vocabulary and morphology, reading comprehension, literary analysis and text types, the stages of writing development and essential grammar, and finally, questions on assessment and data-driven instruction. We are covering it all in this practice test, no matter which state you live in or which specific exam you need to take. If it's an elementary teacher certification exam from the United States and has an English language arts and reading section, and you're the type of student who wants to study smarter and get prepared in days, not weeks, you need to watch this complete video. Now, in this YouTube version, I'm covering 50 practice test questions for free, but if you really want to make sure you are prepared to pass, click the link in the description or visit teacherpreps.com to get instant access to the full 154 question video walkthrough where you can actually take the online practice test that we're going to be going over today. It all lives in one elementary teacher certification exam test prep library, which you'll have complete access to. This includes all of my test prep resources that I've ever made. This is your one-stop shop to make sure that you pass. But hey, enough talk. It's time to begin. Grab something to write with, and let's dive into our first question. Hey there, future teacher, and welcome to this Ultimate English Language Arts Practice Test. This is going to be a helpful resource where we are going to go over every type of question that you are likely to see on exam day so that you have a better chance of passing. The way that this is going to work is I'll read the question out loud to you. You'll take a moment, pause the video if you need, and then select the correct response or the best one that you think looks like the best fit, and then together we'll talk about the correct response and why it is the best answer. Without further ado, let's begin. So here we have number one, which reads, how many phonemes are in the word scratch? Again, take a moment, select the best response, and then we'll talk about it. All right, now let's break this one down. This is a classic teacher certification exam question that you will likely see. Now, it will not use the word scratch, I'm sure, but you'll probably get a question that it asks how many phonemes. And this is all about phonemic awareness. The test takers here, they want to check that you understand that you can separate the letters on the page from the actual words. All right, so don't just count the letters. That's a trap. Sound it out slowly. This is S, K, R, A, and then CH. So S, K, R, A, Ch. Notice that the CH, that's one single sound, and the CH makes that Ch sound. So here we have a total of 5 sounds. These are 5 phonemes. All right, so we're going to go ahead and select answer option C. Moving on down, let's read this. Number 2 says, which of the following reading skills are most appropriate to learn in the 3rd grade? All right, this question is all about knowing your grade level standards, and the trick is that the test takers will give you some answer choices with a mix of different grade levels, and it's going to be your job on exam day to find the one that is purely the grade that you're looking at. In this case, that's 3rd grade for us. So I see here that options A, B, and C all contain skills from kindergarten or 1st grade, like rhyming, for example. Option D, however, lists complex skills like analyzing historical events, and this is the best answer. So we'll go ahead and mark option D. All right, moving on to question number 3. This reads, which of the following words has an open syllable? Syllable types are a must-know for your elementary teacher certification exam, and so before we talk about open syllables, which is what this question is asking, let's talk about a closed syllable. All right, remember that a closed syllable ends in a consonant, which closes in the vowel. However, open consonant words can also end in a consonant. Excuse me. Yes, open can also end in a consonant. However, the word sounds different. So if we take a look at closed sounds, we have basket, puppet, napkin. Like just when you say those, notice how they just close. Whereas the word tiger, when you break it apart, the first syllable is that ti, ta. The syllable ends with the vowel I, and then you hear the long I sound, and that's the open syllable. So your test will expect you to know the difference. And so in this case, answer option A is correct. You're doing great so far. Let's go on to question number 4. This one asks, what is the most effective reading instructional strategy to increase in English language learners' fluency? Take a moment here, read these answer options A through D, select the best one, and then we'll talk about it. All right, so on test day, when you see a question on your exam about the most effective strategy, right here, most effective reading instructional strategy, especially for English language learners, look for the answer that is the most individualized and motivating. So when I look at options A, C, and D, these are all nice to do, but they're generic, whereas option B is really like the powerhouse answer because it targets the student's specific interests. So here we're going to go with option B. Moving on to question number 5. This asks, I walked through the dark and mysterious forest, the leaves crushing under my feet. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I cautiously made my way toward the abandoned cabin. Now, the question asks, how does the reader know that the passage from above is written in the first person narrative? Take a moment here, read the answer options, and select the one that's most appropriate. All right, when I take these, when I took my teacher certification exam, what I noticed a strategy that helped me was to figure out what type of question this was. And when I read this, this is a pretty straightforward literary analysis question. And they're kind of giving this away for first person perspective through the use of pronouns like I, me, and my. So the narrator is telling their own story. The other options describe the passage. So I'm going to go ahead with answer option C, which has this I source right here. Moving on to question number 6. And this asks, which of the following is the best example of a primary source? All right, so this question is all about being able to identify the difference between primary and secondary sources. This is a concept that will definitely be on your exam. And a primary source, remember, is a first-hand original account. It's really the raw material of history. And so here we can think of, for example, like a diary entry, which would be option A. Moving on to question number 7. This one asks, which of the following is the only example of a secondary source? All right, and here is the reverse of the previous question. They want you to spot the secondary source among the primary ones. An autobiography, a photo, a letter, these are all primary. Remember, that means original or first-hand accounts. Whereas a magazine article, however, is written by a journalist who researched the topic and now is presenting their own analysis. So we're going to go ahead and circle option D, a magazine article. Moving on to question number 8. Which of the following are all examples of fables, except which one? This test question checks your knowledge of literary genres. This is another key characteristic of certification exams, elementary teacher certification exams, and the key characteristic of a fable, which is what they're asking, is that remember that these are short stories, typically talking about animals and teaching a moral lesson. So the tortoise and the hare and the other options are all examples, whereas The Little Mermaid is a classic fairy tale. So they asked which one is not. So we're going to select option B and move on to question number 9. This one asks which of the following can be classified as an expository text? All right, for your exam, you're going to need to know different text types. And remember, an expository text is all about one thing, explaining or informing. And its purpose is to give you facts. Think here, science or history textbook. And so let's see here. What do we have? Collection of poems, short story, a play, and science textbook is exactly that. We're going to go with option D. And let's move on to question number 10. And actually, I can scoot that over so we have more space. All right, so question number 10 asks, a student writes, I love my dog, with some spelling errors right there. He is so fluffy. We, PLY, we play at the park. Which stage of developmental writing is this student at? Another really important example for your elementary teacher certification exam. This is a classic um, writer's stage. Remember, there are different stages of the writing process that you'll need to know. And this is an emergent writer, and you can spot it using the inventional spelling and spelling words as how they sound. So, for example, instead of LOVE, this student wrote LUV, which, shows that, they're on their way, as well as some other words, kind of like play and park, missing each, a vowel. And so in this case, this student is at that letter C, emergent writing stage. Moving on to question number 11. A student writes a well-organized essay with a clear thesis statement, supporting paragraphs with evidence, and a concluding paragraph. The student uses varied sentence structures and demonstrates a strong command of grammar and mechanics. Which developmental writing stage is the student currently at? Again, asking us to demonstrate our understanding of the writing stages. This description is the goal we want all students to reach. And the key here is the combination of solid organization, varied sentences, and a strong command of grammar. Right here, and mechanics. So we're going to go ahead, and this is at the proficient stage. All right, moving on to question number 12. This one asks, a student writes, my favorite color is blue. I like to play with my friends at the park. We have fun. The student is beginning to use some punctuation and capitalization correctly, but still struggles with spelling and sentence structure. Which writing developmental stage is the student at? So this block of questions, as you can see on this practice exam, is all about, making sure that you can differentiate the writing stages. And when I wrote this practice test, I wanted to go over all of the stages because, you know, you never know which stage your real teacher certification exam is going to give you. So I wanted to give you all of them so that you can have an example of each. All right, so for number 12, the student is at the what's called transitional stage. That's option B. And you can think of this as transitional stage as being like It's a good word for transitional stage because it's kind of like a bridge, transitional stage, a bridge between emergent and conventional. And the student here is moving away from purely phonetic spelling and starting to use some real spelling rules. All right, so moving on to question number 13. And this one asks, a student consistently uses correct grammar, punctuation, and spelling in their writing. They can write a variety of sentence types and organize their ideas into coherent paragraphs. However, they may not yet have a fully developed personal writing style. Which of the following stages in the writing development cycle is the student at? All right, so the key here is this word conventional. All right, I'm going to write here at option D. And this writer we can see is at the conventional writing stage because they know and they use conventions of English correctly. The punctuation is there, spelling is right, sentence is complete, the writing is technically correct. All right, moving on to question number 14. This one reads, identify the only proper noun in the sentence. The students are reading a book about Abraham Lincoln. This is a fundamental grammar question, and you'll have these types of questions on your exam. A proper noun, remember, if it's been a while, this is the specific name of a person, place, or thing, and it's always capitalized. I see Abraham Lincoln, and I'm going with that. Number 15, this asks, which word is the answer options below? Excuse me, which word in the answer options below is a pronoun? Another grammar, specifically parts of speech question. And remember, a pronoun takes the place of a noun. So she can take the place of girl or a name like Mary, for example. And for that reason, we are going to go with option C, she. All right, moving on to question number 16. Which word below accurately identifies an adjective? Remember that an adjective's job is to describe a noun, and you can have a happy dog, and happy describes the dog. Whereas, for example, quickly, option A, that is an adverb because it describes a verb. Then we have jump, option C, that's a verb, and house is a noun. So a simple test to see if you can put the word in front of a person, we have happy person, and that does work. Option B is correct. You're doing great. Thanks so much for sticking around, and I hope you're finding this helpful. Let's go on to question number 17. In the sentence, the tallest building in the city is the new skyscraper, which word is a superlative? All right, so remember that superlatives are all about the highest degree of comparison. They usually end in est or they use the word most. So we can think here, option D, tallest. Moving on to question number 18. Which word is classified correctly as an article? This is a vocabulary question for the grammar terms section of your exam. And remember that there are three articles in the English language, such as a, an, and the. And so here I can see option B, an, would be the correct response. Moving on to question number 19. The wind whispered secrets through the trees. This sentence is an example of. All right, so this question is about figurative language, another major topic, and the correct response is option A, personification. And this is when you give human qualities like whispering or actions to inanimate objects like trees. Moving on to question number 20. This one asks, which of the following best defines alliteration? And this is a straight definition question. You just need to know these terms and their definition. So if it's been a while, let's have a refresher that alliteration is all about the repetition of the first sound in a series of words, like silly Sally sells seashells. And when I read option A, this is a simile, option B is personification, and D is an onomatopoeia. And so you need to know all of these for test day. And that means it's going to be option C. Moving on to question number 21. This asks, the classroom was a zoo. This is an example of what? This is a classic metaphor. Remember, a metaphor is a direct comparison between two unlike things using like or as. It says one thing or another, and in this sentence, the classroom was a zoo, even though it doesn't actually use the words like or as. We need to understand that it's the same as the classroom was like a zoo. All right, so moving on to question number 22. This asks, she is as sly as a fox is an example of what? And here's the other side of the coin for our grammar section. This sentence uses the word as, right there, to make the comparison. As sly as a fox. The um, presence of words like or as is a dead giveaway, and so this is a simile. Moving on to question number 23. Which of the following is an example of a complex sentence? You have to be able to identify sentence structures on your exam, and what they're asking, a complex sentence has one independent clause and at least one dependent clause. And in option A, we went, we went to the park is an independent clause, meaning it can stand on its own. Whereas although it was raining is a dependent clause, making this a good example of a complex sentence, and we are going to go with answer option A. Moving on to question number 24. Here we have some sentences all marked with numbers. Let's read this out loud. The water cycle is the continuous movement of water on, above, and below the surface of the earth. It is a complex system that includes evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and collection. The sun's energy drives the water cycle by causing evaporation. Without the water cycle, life on Earth would not be possible. Which sentence is the topic sentence? Ooh, good one. Remember that the topic sentence is the big idea of the paragraph. It's really the umbrella that all the other sentences kind of huddle with inside. The first sentence here introduces the main subject, which is the water cycle. The sentences that follow all give more specific details about that first sentence. On your exam, the topic sentence is very often, although not always, but often the first sentence of the paragraph. So sort of double check that one. And we're going to go with option A. Moving on to question number 25. Here we go. My family went to the beach last summer. We had a great time swimming and building sandcastles. My favorite flavor of ice cream is chocolate. We also collected seashells and watched the sunset. Which of the following is the best choice to improve the student's paragraph? All right, so this student wrote this paragraph, and we need to select the answer option A, B, C, or D that would make this writing more succinct or stronger. Which do you think it would be? A, B, C, or D? All right, and this is considered a revision question. Again, sometimes it helps me to kind of paraphrase and just really identify what type of question I'm being asked so that I can understand what type of answer I need to be looking for. And a good paragraph should be really about one main idea. So this paragraph is all about a trip to the beach, which is really nice. Sentence 3, however, is about loving chocolate, which is a little bit off topic and it doesn't fit. So I'm going to go here with option C and we're just going to omit sentence 3. All right, moving on to question number 26. The Great Barrier Reef is the world's largest coral reef system composed of over 2,900 individual reefs and 900 islands stretching from over 2,300 kilometers. Which of the following inferences is best supported by the passage? Take a moment to select your best choice. All right, now when I'm looking at this, I see that this is an inference question. We need to infer the meaning, and an inference question asks you really to be a detective, is how I like to think about it. It's also how I used to teach it to my students. So a detective and draw a conclusion based on the evidence of what you're given in the text. And the passage lists a number of reefs and islands and species. All of that evidence directly supports the conclusion that the reef is important and diverse. The other options are a little too extreme, and we're going to go with option D, important and diverse. All right, moving on to question number 27. This one asks, a teacher says, listen to the SH or sh sound in the word ship. Which of the following skills is the teacher teaching? In this question, this is a good one for your practice, and it asks you to know the difference between a digraph and a blend. Remember, a digraph is two letters that team up to make one sound. The S and the H here are their own sounds, but together they make a single sound. That's the sh. So the S is s and the H is h, but together is sh, so it's different. They come together to make one sound, and that is a digraph. And so we're going to go with option A, a consonant digraph. Moving on to question number 28. This one reads, a teacher shows students the word blue and says, notice how the b and l sounds blend together at the beginning of the word. Which of the following skills is the teacher teaching? Take a moment to find the best answer. All right, so working off our question, the last one, that previous one, this is the other side of that coin. And this is a consonant blend. So up top was a consonant digraph, and this is a consonant blend. Moving on to question number 29. This asks, a teacher points to the word boat and explains that the OA together makes a long O sound, boat. Which of the following skills is the teacher teaching? This is the same concept as the consonant digraph from above, but with vowels. So in boat, the two vowels O and A, they work together to make a single long O sound. Two vowels, one sound. That is a vowel digraph. Moving to question number 30, a teacher is teaching students that in the word read, the EA makes the single long E sound. Which of the following skills is the teacher teaching? Again, notice here how I'm trying to provide you with all of the practice. Normally, your teacher certification exam will only give you one or maybe two of these, but you don't know which they're going to give you about a consonant digraph, consonant blend, vowel digraph, vowel diphthong, and so I wanted to provide you with all the examples. All right, so this is another type of question in that the word read, we have these vowels E and A, and they're teaming up to make one sound. And since the two vowels make one sound, that is going to be a vowel digraph. Moving on to question number 31. This one asks, which word would a teacher use to teach an onset and a rhyme? Onset and rhyme is a way to break down single syllable words. The onset in the consonant sound or sounds before the vowel. All right, so remember also that the rhyme in the vowel is everything that comes after it. For example, if we have a word like cat, the onset is that K sound, k, and the rhyme is the two letters afterwards, at. And the structure is perfect for teaching word families. So we're going to go ahead with cat. Excuse me. Question number 32. This one asks, in the word unhappily, which part is the suffix? Take a moment to find the best response. All right, so remember we have root words, which is happy, and then we have affixes. We have the prefix un, and we have the suffix ly. And so we're going to go, and this is asking about the suffix, which is at the end, and so we're going to go with ALY. All right, moving on to question number 33. In the sentence, the cat is sleeping on the mat. Which word is the preposition? Which word is a preposition? If it's been a while, remember that prepositions are words that show a relationship between a noun and another word, and these are dealing with location or position. And so on the mat is the preposition right here, on. All right, moving to question 34. In the sentence, the dog barked loudly. Which word is an adverb? Remember that adverbs modify verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. A huge clue here for when you actually take your real elementary teacher certification test is that many adverbs end in ly, and in this sentence, let's see here, the dog barked loudly. This is the adverb. We're going to go with option B. And moving on to question number 35. I'm so hungry I could eat a horse is an example of what? So some of these words are kind of long and we don't use them too often in spoken English. So yeah, the refresher can be really nice. And we can remember that hyperbole is really just a fancy word for extreme exaggeration for effect. So nobody is going to actually eat a whole horse. And it's, hyperbole is an over the top way of saying, hey, I'm hungry. So we're going to go with option A. Moving on to question number 36. A student reads the sentence, the dog ran through the park as the dog ran through the playground. Which type of reading error did the student make? I can't tell you how important understanding all of these specific technical terms are. When I was doing my master's of elementary education and the teacher certification exam that I went through, I swear we never learned any of this. And I found that studying for the teacher test, my elementary state teacher certification exam, was basically just learning all of this on my own. And so wish that videos like this would have existed. And so I really hope that this feels helpful because I found reading through hundreds of pages of study guides to be just not the way that I preferred to learn. And so I'm glad that I can just give these answers to you. All right. So here we have, yeah, this specific error. And I remember having a question like this on my exam. That's why I'm saying it's really important. So you have this reading error, and there are different types of reading errors. And this is what's called here we have letter D, semantic reading error. And so remember that semantic, it's all about meaning. And so if this student substituted park for playground, while the word is wrong, the meaning is very similar. And so it actually still makes sense. They probably just weren't paying attention super closely. So what we call this is a semantic error. Let's go on to question number 37. This one asks, a student reads the sentence, the girl with the red bow in her hair is my sister, as the girl with the red bow in her hair are my sister. Which type of reading error does this best classify as? We can see that it's another reading error, but it's really a different type of error. All right, so take a moment here and think about this. Number 37. All right, so this is option B. This is a syntactic error, and this relates to the structure of grammar. So syntax is grammar and its structure of a language. And let's move on to question number 38. And this one asks, which of the following words best shows an R-controlled vowel? Remember that an R-controlled vowel is when a vowel is followed by the letter R, and the R bosses. That's how I think about it. At least the R bosses the vowel around, changing its sound. So although all of these words, run, red, bird, river, all have R's, which one is the R controlled? That is option C, bird. All right, let's keep on going. Option number 39. In which stage of the writing process does a writer correct errors in grammar, punctuation, and spelling? So this is all about the writing process, and you will likely receive a question on test day similar to this one. So the writing process, remember that these are steps in when a student, writes. Oftentimes we'll give them projects, writing like research projects. So we can recall that, well, what is this asking? Let me read this. Which stage in the process does a writer correct errors in grammar, punctuation? All right, so it's not going to be pre-writing, not drafting. Revising, they could, but it's really proofreading. All right, moving on to question number 40. In which stage of the writing process does a writer focus on improving the clarity, organization, and overall effectiveness of their writing? Focus on improving the clarity, organization, overall effectiveness of their writing. All right, for this, here's when I'm going to go with revising, because revising is different than proofreading. When you revise, you're looking at the big picture, and you might reorganize entire paragraphs, add more details, or delete sentences that just didn't work or didn't fit. And it's about making the ideas better. So remember this, revising is for ideas, and proofreading is for errors. Moving on to question number 41. This asks, in which stage of the writing process does a writer brainstorm ideas and plan the structure of their writing? The answer here, we're going to go with option A. That's pre-writing, and that's everything you do before you actually start the actually writing words on paper. This is like the brainstorming um, stage, and you might be making an outline or a word map or word web, and whatever helps get your juices flowing and ideas organized. All right, moving on to question number 42. This one asks, in which stage of the writing process does a writer put their ideas down on paper in a rough form? So we are back to writing stage questions, and here, pre-writing, drafting, revising, or proofreading. I'm going to go with option B, drafting. Remember that this is the stage where you get all of the ideas down. It's what I like to call the sloppy copy. You're not worrying about spelling or like perfect grammar yet. You're just focused on getting your ideas onto paper. Polishing will come later. All right, question number 43. I really appreciate you sticking around, and every question is another point closer to passing. All right, question 43 asks, which of the following informal assessments would be most appropriate to use to assess an individual student's phonemic awareness? Have a look at answer options A, B, C, and D. Pick the best one. Remember that phonemic awareness is all about hearing and manipulating sounds. It actually has the word phone in it. And so this is an auditory skill. Asking a student to identify the sounds in a word directly assesses this. So that's what we're looking for. And when I read option A, asking the student to identify the first, middle, and last sound in a word, that is going to be the one I want to choose because option B tests phonics, option C tests vocabulary, and option D tests writing. Option A isolates the skill all about hearing individual phonemes. Moving on to question number 44. This asks, which of the following informal assessments would be most appropriate to use to assess an individual student's reading vocabulary? All right, so now as you can tell, we've transitioned into the assessments section of this practice test. Remember that in order to assess vocabulary, you need to see if the student knows what words mean. That's what knowing vocabulary is all about. And the best way to do that is to ask them directly, especially how a word's meaning is used in a specific sentence. Option A, it tests fluency. B and D test comprehension. And so option C, asking the student to explain the meaning, is going to be the best way to assess their vocabulary. Moving on to question number 45. This one asks, which of the following informal assessments would be most appropriate to use to assess an individual student's evaluative reading comprehension? Read the answer options. Excuse me. All right. So, looking at number 45 again. All right, we are asked following informal assessments. Oops. All right, following informal assessments. One second here. Why can I not write? There we go. Okay. Drag that back over. All right, so I'm kind of taking a look at these. Sorry, I didn't realize that part of D was still covered up. And remember that there's different levels of comprehension. And in this case, oh, okay, my bad about that. My hand somehow went and touched. And maybe we can kind of scroll down here. Thanks for your patience. And let's check here. Okay. A little bit up. Right there. Nice. All right. So again, evaluative reading comprehension. And so there are different types, different levels of comprehension. Evaluative is a higher level skill that requires our students to make judgments and form opinions. And asking a student how they feel about a character's action forces them to evaluate those actions and also support their opinion. So when I read answer options, for example, A and also B, this looks like literal comprehension, and C is inferential, which is asking the student to infer, and it's really option D, having the student explain how they feel about a character's action. That is evaluative. All right, moving on to question number 46. This asks, which of the following informal assessments would be most appropriate to assess an individual student's reading fluency for reading rate? All right, so I'm going to go right here and just circle option A. That's what I'm looking at. Timing a student as they read a grade level passage aloud for 1 minute. This is going to check the words per minute, and that's reading rate. And having a student read for 1 minute and then counting the words is a standard and direct way for reading rate. All right, let's move on to question number 47. This asks, which of the following informal assessments would be most appropriate to assess an individual student's reading accuracy? Remember, reading accuracy, reading rate, and reading prosody. These are the three legs of reading fluency. Have a look at answer options and select the one you think is the best fit. All right, so reading accuracy is all about how many words the student reads correctly. And when, if you're already a teacher or, if you're taking the certification exam to become licensed and to become a teacher, you'll use what's called a running record. And this is the formal name for the tool that we use to do this. And you, in using a running record, you listen to a student read and they make marks, and we make marks for each of their errors. And then afterwards, what we have to do is calculate the percentage of words that they read correctly. And this is the most direct and precise way to measure reading accuracy. So I'm looking at option B as being the best. Moving on to question number 48. Which of the following informal assessments would be most appropriate to use to assess an individual student's reading? Here it is, reading prosody, the third leg of reading fluency. Take a look at the answer options and select the one that you think is the best. All right, reading prosody is the most subjective reading assessment about fluency of all three. And remember that prosody is the way that you read it, meaning your intonation, your expression, and you can't measure prosody or intonation with a stopwatch or like a multiple choice test. You just have to listen and ask yourself, is this student reading with proper intonation, not like a robot? And so when I look at option D, listening to a student read the passage aloud, paying attention to their expression, that's going to be the best choice for prosody. Moving on to question number 49, which is the best classroom example of an exit ticket evaluation? I really like using exit tickets. I think they're a fun and great way to get feedback after or at the end of a lesson. So an exit ticket, to recall, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a ticket that a student needs to complete or hand in order to exit the the lesson or the class. Oftentimes I would hand out exit tickets. I taught third grade for a couple of years and I taught fourth grade for a couple of years. And I substitute taught kindergarten and I actually taught first grade for 2 years too. But a lot of the times I'll be at the front of the room, either sitting on the chair, reading a book, or teaching a lesson on the whiteboard, and all the students will be sitting on the rug. And then once I finished teaching the thing that I was, then I would hand out like one question, and they would have their pens and they would write their answer, and I would quickly read it, and I would say, either go back and make it more detailed, or go back and try again, and they'd still sit on the rug, or I would say like, yep, you got it, and then they would go ahead and pick up, either the full worksheet or the activity or the text passage, like whatever the next thing is that they were doing, and then they can go and demonstrate their ability to complete it independently. So yeah, exit tickets are a nice tool for teachers. And when I'm looking at B, this looks like the best. Right here, a short question or prompt that students respond to at the end of a lesson. Very nice. Moving on to question number 50. You are rocking if you're sticking around here. Which is the best example of a progress monitoring assessment? Again, these technical words are so important to just have an extremely good grasp on when you're taking your elementary teacher test. You do not want to spend any time at all kind of scratching your head and asking yourself, oh, darn, I forget what was the progress monitoring assessment. You really need to go into the test having just like if someone says progress monitoring assessment, you know exactly what that means. Summative assessment, you know exactly what that means. Exit ticket, you know exactly what that means. So that you can, focus on completing the test and not kind of trying to remember what these words are. All right. So option A is best here, a weekly quiz to check. Remember, progress monitoring is all about frequent, regular check-ins to see if students are making progress towards a goal. Moving on to question number 51. This one asks, which of the following is the best example of a summative assessment? Read the answer options and then we'll talk about it.